Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and oh god, you must have seen the news surely. If not, then you must know from the title, Monster Hunter is finally coming to Switch in the West in the form of Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. And because it's Monster Hunter, I couldn't do this alone, could I? No, of course, I've got the venerable, the wonderful, the absolutely outstanding Arekkz on the other end of this Skype call. So say hello, you person over there.
Hey, he's done it again. Hello, you person over there. How's it going? Good to be back. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's always good to have somebody who knows properly what they're talking about when it comes to Monster Hunter. Because I've played a fair amount, and I'm absolutely thrilled that it's finally coming to Switch, because I love Monster Hunter to pieces, but I haven't actually played World yet, and so I feel a little bit out of the loop, so it's very handy to have you here.
What's Monster Hunter? Never heard of it.
Oh, it's, yeah, you should have mentioned before the video started. No, okay, yeah, so it's finally coming to the West, and this is basically Monster Hunter Double Cross, which has been out in Japan for quite some time now, but which is also... well, the big question that I think is on everyone's lips is, well, this isn't a question, but one, bloody finally, and two, why has it taken so bloody long?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and in truth, I don't know the actual answer for it, but I think it's because if you look back at previous Monster Hunter histories, like typically the way that the format for the series always works is Japan will get a version, which is invariably just the low rank to high rank version, and then they release like an ultimate version, or in Japan they call it the G version, and then we tend to get that version. It doesn't always work that way, you know, sometimes we've had some different iterations, but generally speaking, Japan are used to this format of, you know, base game, follow-up expansion like the next year, and then we normally just get like the Ultra one. That's typically how it happens. So when Generations first came out, or when it came out in Japan as Monster Hunter Cross, and we got that was a bit of a strange one. I kind of always expected that we wouldn't get that one until whatever follow-up thing was. So the fact that we got the base version, I then almost kind of just thought to myself, well, we're probably never going to get the follow-up version. And then when they follow up to announce World, they're obviously going to focus on that, you know, initially. Now, to be clear, there are two different Monster Hunter teams. Yeah, there's the team that Ryozo and Tokuda typically work on the like the main series stuff, so that's, you know, 4 Ultimate, 3 obviously all the original ones, and by extension World as well. And then you have Kojima, who runs the other team, who have made things like Portable Third and Generations, and of course, you know, Double Cross as well. So there are two different teams, so they can, you know, they are working independently. So yeah, in truth, I don't know why. All I can assume is that given that they were ramping up for World, even though the team internally would have the capacity to make the other one, I guess they didn't want to push it at the same time, because the big thing for World as well, the big thing for like Capcom internally was that, you know, they're just like, this was their big push to be like, you know, we really want to try and make, like every time they've released a new one, they're trying to sort of make Monster Hunter bigger in the West. And, you know, 4 Ultimate sold quite well, and then Generations didn't do too bad. And I think each time they've made steps towards it, but it's still never quite taken off in the same way. Like, it's always still had, ultimately, quite a niche audience. You know, I love the series, but it's just never really been that huge release. So when World came out, you know, they really put a lot of effort into it. Obviously, they moved to different platforms. And I think at the time, when they were getting so many people into it, if they had have launched the Switch version of Generations like Ultimate at the same time, it almost would have been a little bit confusing. Like, imagine if they dropped it first, and there was a lot of people getting excited about World, and they were like, oh, let me go and try a Monster Hunter. If they came in at like Generations Ultimate, like, I love the game. It's a great game, and it's an amazing Monster Hunter, but if it's your first Monster Hunter you've ever played, it's probably not got the best entry point. It's not like, it doesn't help you too much when you get in. You kind of get dropped in. It's like, here's everything, have fun. There's not even really a proper story to follow in Generations Ultimate. Like, I mean, there's a bit of one, but, you know, it's not. So what I'm saying is, like, you know, if you're a fan of the series, you'll love it. But if you're new, it's just definitely, it's not the game that I would have said to someone, you should try this as your first ever Monster Hunter. So I feel like that's probably the reason behind it. I think, you know, they wanted to focus on World, they wanted it to be a success, they wanted to kind of grow in the West, so they almost needed to just say, let's focus on this for now, build the audience, and then now that people are starting to, you know, they've had so many sales. I think they're on like 7.9 million on World now, and you know, now that there is a very big audience and people are like, oh, I've now discovered Monster Hunter, I know what it is, I want to know more. People now might be in a position to then try this other one.
Well, thanks for taking over the video there. That was marvelous.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's the reason I got you on here, because you really know your stuff. And yeah, I have to say that's a frustratingly conclusive and good argument. So I don't really know what to respond with other than, well, I do think that perhaps, because for a long time they did say that they had no plans to bring what was known as Double Cross over to the West. So I wonder whether they released World and they saw that it just completely blew up and they were like, oh, maybe there is an audience for us now, and they thought, we've got this game. It doesn't really need any translation because we've, generations already exist, so there's only a little bit that needs to be done. Why don't we just, it's easy money, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like there could have genuinely been like that kind of side to it, because now that it has got the bigger audience, people are probably more receptive to that, and also the fact that Switch has just done so well as well. That it's kind of like a no-brainer, right? I mean, Monster Hunter is now effectively on, well, once the PC version of World launches in autumn, Monster Hunter is effectively on every single platform, bar 3DS, but I know they're, transitioning slightly away from that. But the point is, whether you're Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, you will be able to play Monster Hunter. And yeah, so I think to a degree, that might have also been the thing. I mean, having so many sales, as you say, it's kind of like, it's there, why not just make use of it, right? And I'm really interested to see, from a sales point of view, and just sort of see how it does, because, as mentioned before, for Ultimate, Generations did quite well, but in the grand scheme of things, they weren't blockbuster, insane sales numbers. But now that there's such a big audience around World, now it will be quite strange, because if someone's gone into World as their first ever Monster Hunter and they jump over to Generations Ultimate, it's going to be a bit of a learning experience, because it is, technically speaking, a step backwards. I don't mean that in a negative way, because it's an amazing game, but World introduced so many quality of life things that will not be present. So if you kind of came in at World and you're like, oh, this is really good, and you go backwards, it might be... Yeah, I'm interested to sort of see how people react to that. Yeah,
because, well, I suppose, to use a half-decent allegory, it's a bit like going from Super Mario Odyssey and then going back to Galaxy or Galaxy 2. It's still an amazing game, and some people would even argue it's better, and I'm not saying that about World at all, but just to sort of say that it's not necessarily a lesser game, it's just older and maybe not quite as well-rounded.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think there are some things. I think it's also one of those, Monster Hunter is going through this transitional period. It's kind of like, you look at other games as well. I mean, pick Assassin's Creed. You look at the game now versus when number 1 first came out. The series goes through all these changes, right? And it's like a Monster Hunter. I feel like whatever happens after World, if they make World 2, I feel like Monster Hunter's reached this point where they're not going to go back now. So I feel like if they made World 2, they're not suddenly going to release a map split into loading zones again and remove that stuff. I feel like the series has now moved into this next transition. So yeah, so for people to kind of go back on this one, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think if they picked up and they enjoy the core monster hunting experience, then they'll be fine. But I feel like if people play World slightly more casually, maybe they, it's still their first thing, they dipped into it a little bit and enjoyed, the fluidity offered, then maybe Generations Ultimate won't be for them. But I mean, it's definitely, I think anyone out there that has dipped into it and is like, suddenly I like what this series is. I think there's a lot to be gained from that. I mean, because the nice thing about Generations Ultimate, it has a ton of content. I mean, World has, I think it's 30 large monsters, if memory serves me correctly. Generations Ultimate has 93.
Oh,
I mean, obviously,
I didn't realise World had that few monsters, because I've tried to keep myself a little bit detached from it, just so I don't get too sad that I haven't played it. I know I could get it on another system, but I'm so sort of invested in the Switch now that there's a big part of me that sort of thinks maybe it'll come to Switch and then I can experience it for the first time on the platform I want to experience it for the first time on.
I think the monster number for that one, I mean, again, it's kind of like I'm just sort of assuming, but previously, they to take monsters from, say, 4 Ultimate into Generations, it's still built on the same engine, so it's almost like a, don't mean to kind of make it sound crude like that, but basically it's like a copy-paste thing, right? You can just drag the monsters for Ultimate. Whereas for World, it was built from the ground up, and I guess because World was such a gamble for Capcom, they were trying to make it big in the West, but if it didn't work, so I don't feel like they would invest and make 90 monsters in World to begin with. I feel like now they know that there's an audience for it, I feel like whatever they plan to do next will probably be big, right? But also Generations got to that point, and Generation Ultimate, it was they almost referred to it like a celebration game, where it was celebrating, a lot of the series that came before, so there were tons of monsters piled into it. But again, they could draw from anything like the 3DS ones. But in actual fact, even though Monster Hunter World sounds low with 30, I remember Monster Hunter Tri launched with 18 monsters. So, yeah, exactly, right? But yeah, I still sunk hundreds of hours into that, so it's but I think that'll be the interesting thing for people, because one of the main comments for a lot of people that play World, they love it, they're enjoying it, but one thing is, for example, in the armor and the weapons, there's not quite as much variety. A lot of things are built on the same kind of weapon trees. There's there's quite a lot of endgame weapons that look quite similar to one another because they've got the same base, whereas the previous ones on 3DS, everything was unique. There is tons of gear. Of all those 93 monsters, they've all got armor sets. There's also Gunner and Blade Master armor sets. There's weapons for them. There's the Deviant sets. There's so much stuff. So yeah, if anyone was like, oh, I really like this and I want to go and craft some more, you know, like armor and weapons, then yeah, you've got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, and for the people who've played Monster Hunter games on the 3DS, this is essentially a 3DS game. I mean, I think it definitely runs at a high resolution, obviously, because that would be insane if it didn't. But it does only run, unless they've changed things. Like as far as I know, we don't know for absolute certain, but Double Cross definitely only ran at 30 frames a second, and it was only upscaled.
That's correct, yes.
That's due to something to do with it's actually compatible with the 3DS version as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, obviously the one thing with us is that in the West we're only getting it on Switch, but in Japan it first came out on 3DS, and then they released the HD version. So it is compatible, but it is compatible with that. Like in Japan, you could play multiplayer on the Switch with people that have the 3DS. So yeah, and I think to that degree, that's probably why they didn't shift that. Because I remember for Ultimate, it kind of had like a variable frame rate. There were some areas where like it would run at 60, and you would sort of like it would look like super fluid. And then there would be some areas in the maps where it would drop down to 30. But I think it's always been a bit of a struggle on the 3DS to sort of try and push that. And yeah, I mean, so again, probably because ultimately, I mean, you could say, all right, sure, in the West, if they're not getting it on 3DS, then why don't we have 60 FPS? But because it is basically just it's a localization, right? They're not changing it. They're not going to be updating anything like that. It's literally just localizing the Double Cross version. So because it was built with that in mind, then I think that's basically the reason behind it. Yes,
but I mean, you could also argue that there's no because we haven't got it in the West. As long as there weren't compatibility issues if playing online with other people, say in Japan with Double Cross, that surely they could just very easily uncap the frame rate. And or just at least raise the cap to 60, and it should theoretically just run at 60 because it is only a 3DS game, and the jump from even the new 3DS to the Switch is enormous.
Yeah, true.
I suppose we'll just have to wait and see, won't we?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I would love it if that happens, but it's definitely at least. I mean, the nice thing is it does still look and run really nicely on like regardless anyway. So, but no, it would have been an interesting thing to think about. I guess until we get hands on, I think they said it's playable at E3, so I guess it'll be quite interesting to see how it runs then.
Yeah, and it'll be nice to be able to play a Monster Hunter game, at least for me personally, without getting cramp in my hands, because I love the 3DS games, but the 3DS is not a system that's suitable for really intense gameplay over, a half-an-hour game session that you can't even pause, essentially. It's just not suited to it. So the ability to use a Pro Controller and stuff like that and use it on the big screen, I'm so up for that. I loved doing that in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate on the Wii U, where you could have it up on the big screen and you'd have other people around you on the 3DS. Did loads of that at uni, so the ability to do that again, I'm so up for that.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. It's gonna be super awesome. I love World, but I do miss the being able to take Monster Hunter with me and just like play on the go as well. But yeah, definitely with Pro Controller, because I think also I'm pretty sure I haven't played like Double Cross for quite a few months, but I'm pretty sure that when you have the Pro Controller, they have Rumble this time around, so you can actually kind of get some feedback as well, which is kind of nice.
Lovely. Well, let's hope they bring that to the Joy-Con as well as the Pro Controller, which I'd be surprised if they didn't. That's probably something you could see in the demo, because there's still the Double Cross demo available on the Japanese eShop, I believe.
Yes, yeah, and I imagine we'll probably get one. We'll probably get an English demo like nearer to launch.
Yeah, we probably will. In fact, that's probably what you're looking at now at the moment, lovely audience, because that's all I've got that's even remotely relevant that I can actually capture from, because obviously 3DS is not an easy thing to capture from. We did have a machine, but we've sent it back, because you got to get with the times. But anyway, Arekkz, thank you so much for coming along, and thank you for injecting this video with your enormous Monster Hunter mastery. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. I always enjoy being here. So definitely, hopefully, I'll be back soon.
Well, no doubt you will. Maybe something to do with E3. Who knows? Ooh. But anyway, thank you, Arekkz, again, and thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you jump and leap and use the insect glaive on that subscribe button. I've forgotten the actual terms because it's been too long, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.